Buy a house or live on rent. A small 1% rule that can change your big decision. Pause for a moment and think. Every month, a large part of your salary goes either toward rent or EMI. People around you give advice. Paying rent is like burning money. Someone says buy a house, at least you'll have your own roof. And life passes by in this confusion. But the real question is not what people are saying. The real question is, does buying property actually make financial sense, or has it become just an emotional decision? And the answer to this question is hidden in a small rule called the 1% rule. The 1% rule sounds very simple, but the thinking behind it can show you the complete picture of rent versus buy. Especially in today's India, where property prices are touching the sky while rents are not rising at the same pace. People buy flats worth crores, but the rent they earn in a year gives lower returns than even a bank fixed deposit. In such a situation, the 1% rule works like a reality check. The basic definition of this rule is very simple. From an investment point of view, a property is considered good only when the monthly rent it generates is at least 1% of its total price. That means if a flat costs 1 crore, ideally its rent should be around 1 lakh per month. If the rent is 25,000 to 30,000, it is clear that from an investment perspective, the deal is weak. This is where most people get shocked. Because in major Indian cities, hardly any residential property meets this benchmark. In cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and Bengaluru, the rent for a 1 crore flat is often only between 30,000 and 50,000 per month. That is nowhere near 1%, but closer to 0.3% or 0.4%. So does this mean buying a house in India is foolish? The answer is not that straightforward. First, it is important to understand where the 1% rule came from. This rule became popular in countries like the United States and Europe, where the rental market is very strong. There, the purpose of buying property is often investment, rental income, and later capital appreciation. Home loan interest rates are lower, and rent usually covers the EMI. That is why this rule feels more practical there. The situation in India is a little different. Here, buying a home is not just an investment, but also a social and emotional decision. Owning your own home is seen as a symbol of security. Marriage, family, children's education. Everything is connected to having a home. But that does not mean financial logic should be completely ignored. And this is where the 1% rule works like a filter. If you want to buy a house purely for investment, that is to rent it out, the 1% rule immediately alerts you. Suppose you are buying a flat worth 80 lakh and the rent you receive is only 25,000 per month. That makes the annual rent 3 lakh, which means an annual rental yield of around 3.75%. After subtracting maintenance, property tax, vacant months and taxes, the net return becomes even lower. Then the question arises, wouldn't investing the same money in mutual funds, index funds, or some other instrument have given better returns? It is also important to understand how to use this rule. First, check the rent of similar properties in your area. Get real data from online portals, local brokers, or nearby residents. Then divide the rent by the property price and multiply by 100. The number you get is your rental yield percentage. If it is close to 1% or higher, the deal can be considered strong from an investment perspective. But here comes a major twist. This calculation does not include many hidden costs, such as stamp duty, registration charges, home loan interest, maintenance fees, society charges, and periodic repairs. All of these together significantly reduce your real return. Many times, people feel happy just looking at EMI and rent, but when they do the final calculation at the end of the year, they realize that money has actually gone out of their pocket. This is where the 1% rule forces you to ask an honest question. Am I buying this house because it makes financial sense, or simply because society expects me to? And the earlier you ask this question, the better it is. Now let's talk about the limitations of this rule. The 1% rule does not take future price growth into account. In India, many people say rent may be low today, but property prices will double in 10 years. This is partly true. In many areas, property prices do rise due to infrastructure development, metros, expressways, or the creation of corporate hubs. But the real question is, will every property do this? And will that growth be as much as you are expecting? If you look at data from the past few years, it becomes clear that residential property price growth in India has not been as spectacular as people believe. Some pockets have delivered good returns, but in most cities, real returns after adjusting for inflation, have been quite limited. On the other hand, the equity market has performed much better over the long term. Moreover, the 1% rule does not account for tax benefits. In India, tax deductions are available on both the interest and principal of a home loan. Many people consider buying a house financially attractive because of these benefits. But here too, there is a reality. Tax benefits matter only if you fall into a tax bracket and have stable income. Buying a property worth crores just to save tax is not always a wise decision. So the question arises, how effective is this rule in India? Experts believe that the 1% rule is somewhat strict for India. Here, the average annual rental yield is between 2% and 3%, which translates to roughly 0.2% to 0.25% per month. From this perspective, almost no property in most Indian cities passes the 1% rule. But that does not mean the rule is useless. It means the rule helps you set realistic expectations. If you work in big cities like Mumbai, Delhi, or Bengaluru, where property prices are high and rents are relatively low, living on rent can often be a more sensible decision. You can live in a good location by paying lower rent and invest the money you save elsewhere. This is where the rent versus buy debate becomes truly practical. In smaller cities and tier 2 and tier 3 towns, the picture is slightly different. Property prices are lower there and rents are relatively better. In some cases, rental yields close to 1% can also be seen. In such areas, buying a house can prove to be a good investment as well, especially if demand is stable. However, the decision cannot be made by looking at numbers alone. In the rent versus buy debate, there are some factors that do not fit into any formula, such as flexibility. Living on rent allows you to change cities easily, switch jobs, or change homes according to your lifestyle. Once you buy a house, this flexibility reduces. On the other hand, buying a home creates an asset which provides mental security. The cost aspect is also important. Buying a house involves a down payment, EMI, maintenance, and repairs, expenses that continue for a long time. Living on rent keeps expenses limited and predictable. But it is also true that living on rent does not create ownership. Even after paying rent for years, nothing is in your name. This is where personal factors play the biggest role. How stable is your job? Do you want to live in the same city for the next 10 to 15 years or not? Is your family going to grow? What are your parents' needs? All these questions can be far more important than the 1% rule. In reality, the 1% rule is not a judge that delivers a final verdict. It is a tool, a starting filter. It gives you a chance to pause and think before making an emotional decision. It says look at the numbers first, then dream. And in today's world, where everything is available on EMI, this pause has become very important. So the next time someone tells you buy a house, paying rent is foolish, you can smile and ask, how does this deal look according to the 1% rule? Maybe other person will fall silent. Because the truth is, not every home purchase is a profitable deal, and not every decision to live on rent is a loss. In the end, the decision is yours alone. But if you make that decision not blindly, but with logical tools like the 1% rule, then whether you buy a house or live on rent, at least there will be no regret. And perhaps that is the biggest win of any major financial decision.
If our video has taught you something new, do not forget to like and share this video so that this information can reach others as well. Your likes and shares are a source of inspiration for us. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know in the comments. It will be our honor to answer your questions and listen to suggestions. And yes, if you like our content, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you stay connected with every new story. Thank you. GRT Business YouTube channel sources: news from various news agencies, opinion polls, and other public sources. We try to ensure that every report and summary is accurate and verified, but we are not responsible for any dispute or error. Our aim is only to provide you with accurate information.